Alright, so in Embers of Neltharion, we're looking to address some of the pain points and unintuitive aspects of balance gameplay. The 10.0 set armor bonus also rotating out, and we're keeping an eye on how the spec plays without it. Good. For this round of changes, we're targeting 3 specific aspects of balance gameplay. Number 1, Stellar Flare and its interactions are so strong that it is best to take it in all scenarios and maintain it on a large number of targets, which is demanding to keep track of and makes balance ramp at the beginning of the fight very long. Like, I agree that Stellar Flare is something that people don't like. I personally actually kind of like it, but I understand if people don't. I don't necessarily agree that Stellar Flare is the biggest issue why our ramp is so long though, right? Because if you do an unplus pull and you're ramping, you're not even pressing Stellar Flare. The reason why our ramp is so long is because we have to put both of our dots to do any damage whatsoever, which in itself takes long. And then we have to enter Eclipse as well. Depending on how many mobs there are, that's like 6, 7, 8 globals, plus 2 Wrath casts. And that's just a long time, right? I think the Stellar Flare itself is not necessarily something that you even worry about currently in like a bigger pool. So I don't necessarily agree that Stellar Flare is like a big reason why our ramp is so big. Number 2, Eclipse and effects. The trigger and entering Eclipse are so strong that they incentivize druids to use Lunar Eclipse in all situations because it is faster to trigger. That is true. There are enough bonuses to Starfire splash damage that it's optimal to target an enemy next to your focus target. Yeah, that is a pretty big downside, yeah. Alright, it's cool that I really like the fact that they are actually so accurately talking about our issues. Even though I don't necessarily agree 100% with the Stellar Flare thing. Like, I don't think it's the main issue why our ramp is so long. But obviously the Eclipse thing is a lot of people hate it. I personally don't mind going Lunar Eclipse all the time. It's kind of whatever to me. But I understand that it's unintuitive and weird. And not targeting your main target to cast Starfire, that is like a big deal. And I'm glad that they are talking about that too. Because I think a lot of people are not even that aware of it. Like, a lot of people don't even know that your Starfire splash does more damage to your main target gets. So the fact that they're really addressing it here is kind of cool. Alright, so addressing these gameplay factors will require significantly reducing the power of some balanced, most impactful talents and bonus. We want balance to be enjoyable to play and powerful when played well in scenarios that is well suited for. So we will be buffing balance elsewhere to make up for those power reductions and keeping an eye on its power and tuning. Alright, so Stellar Flare. Stellar Flare's power is driven significantly by its interactions with talents like Shooting Stars, Cosmic Rapidity, and Waning Twilight. These interactions are strong enough that it's taken for all fights. Our goal is for Stellar Flare to be an optional talent that you choose if you're interested in a dot-focused build. Okay, it should be most effective against small number of targets. The problem with that is that I think that niche is too niche. Like, in my opinion, having a spell that is supposed to be good for a small number of targets, but they also have to live long, obviously, right? Because that's always a thing with dots. So if their goal is for Stellar Flare to be only good in a small number of targets, plus they obviously have to live long, then that almost like never happens. Or that's never a situation that happens so frequently that you would pick it up, in my opinion, right? Unless you take it on single target, of course. If you take it on single target, you would take it. And if you're raiding, there will be like council fights, I guess. But the question is if it's good. Is it good on single target? Because if it's not the best choice on single target, and it's only the best choice on like 2 to 4 targets that live for a long time, then that situation never happens, right? Like, when does that happen? That's like a council fight in the raid, 2 target fight in the raid. That's it. And that's like, you know, it's very rare, but I guess it's whatever. Unless it's also the best choice on single target, then it's fine, of course. We'll see. Because it's at a small number of targets that could also include single target, of course. Okay, we are removing Stellar Flare's interaction with Shooting Stars. This will significantly decrease how essential it is for generating astral power, especially in many target scenarios. To compensate, we're increasing astral power generation from other sources and boosting finisher damage. Okay, cool. I like that. We like that Stellar Flare makes it possible to maintain the waning bonus 100% of the time. However, we'd like to be easier for other builds to make use of Waning Twilight. I like that. So we're extending the duration of Astral Smolder stat. Oh. And creating a new choice node talent with Stellar Flare. Increases Wrath and Starfire Astral Power generation crit. Making it easy to trigger Astral Smolder. Astral Smolder buff. Like, Astral Smolder is weird. It's nice that the duration is extended, but buffing crit is also like problematic again, because the more crit you can get from talents, the less valuable crit becomes, which is also like kind of a nerf to crit, which is a nerf to stats, which is a nerf to scaling. So that's a little bit of a problem. And then additionally, relying on crit is always... I just hate when you have to rely on something, like on an RNG thing, right? Because if you don't crit, you don't have waning, right? If you crit, you have waning, but not on all of the targets. So it's like, it's a bit weird, but I understand that... I mean, we already have mushrooms, which applies waning. I'm not the biggest fan of Smolder when it comes to like waning uptime. Smolder is weird. I mean, the other problem with Smolder is the fact that, especially when you do AoE, because this whole waning problem is only a problem on AoE anyway, right? Because on one target, you have Stellar Flare and it's whatever, right? And this is only an issue on multiple targets. And the problem with Smolder as well is that it's reliant on your filler casts. And you don't necessarily spend so much time casting fillers because we have to do so many other things, right? Like we have to put dots on all of our targets, which is already going to take... That already takes a long time. We have to enter Eclipse, which takes a long time. We have to cast our Fury Loon. We have to cast our Starfalls. So the amount of time we spent casting Starfire is actually pretty low, even now when Starfire is a big portion of our damage. So the amount of times you have the opportunity to even proc Smolder seems a bit low. Being reliant on casting Starfires to proc Smolder to get waning is just like weird. But we'll see. Then entering Eclipse and 10.0 stat armor. The 10.0 stat armor 4-piece bonus is changing from a free finisher dealing 35% extra damage to a 5 AP discounted finisher dealing 20% extra damage. Okay. This change will make balanced stat bonus power more comparable to other classes. It's also the main change we're making to reduce the importance of entering Eclipse as often as possible. So they're nerfing 4-piece. I mean, okay, so the reason why they're nerfing 4-piece is because they don't want us to keep equipping it over the new set, clearly, right? Because our current set is so good that the new set would have to also be so good for us to replace the old set, and they don't want that. And I'm very happy that they're addressing that issue, because I don't want our new set to be as strong as the current set, because I hate it when set is so strong. It makes no sense to me, and I hate it. I hate it when your 4-pass is like 50% damage increase, you know, like it's just kind of dumb. Because then if you don't have it, it feels like you're not even playing a real class. So the fact that they're nerfing 4-piece is good, as long as they compensate for the damage losses we're getting by buffing our baseline spells, which they seem to be doing, so. But yeah, so this 4-piece nerf here is literally just so they don't need to make the new set so strong. Then, Starfire AoE. Several effects increase the damage Starfire deals to nearby targets, even pushing it above its primary target damage. To change this, we are changing Solo to Forest to instead increase Starfire's damage and Astral Power generation against multiple targets. Okay. We don't really have any numbers on this one, so we don't know how much our Astral Power generation gets increased for hitting multiple targets. Also, like, is it capped? Is it uncapped? If there's 20 targets, do we cast one Starfire and it gives us 100 Astral Power? Or, like, what's it gonna do, right? But it's an interesting concept, I guess. Yeah, it does seem pretty cool to get more Astral Power the more targets you're hitting with it. The rest. In addition to the above, we're making some targeted changes to underpowered or under-selected talents to make them more competitive, especially balanced and kept talents. Shooting stars can no longer be triggered by Stellar Flare. New talent. Wild Surges. Your chance to crit with Wrath and Starfire is increased by 15%, and they generate 2 additional Astral Power. This is a choice node with Stellar Flare. Oh, a choice node with Stellar Flare. Yeah. 2 extra Astral Power. I mean, that doesn't seem that much for AoE. I mean, I guess the purpose of this talent, as far as I understand, the purpose of this talent is supposed to be that we pick this up on AoE instead of Flare, right? Generating 2 more Astral Power and a Starfire doesn't seem that great, though, but maybe... Okay, so Wrath and Starfire generate 10 Astral Power from 8. Okay, that's also good, I guess. I don't want them to buff Wrath and Starfire too much when it comes to Astral Power generation, because I don't like being so reliant on fillers, because that is literally what we did in the past. Like, if you guys remember, I think it was most expansions the past couple of years. I think Shadowlands was pretty obvious, but also BFA, where we were literally sitting there and not generate any astral power unless we casted fillers. That's really bad gameplay. I don't like that. Like, I don't like it when you have to sit there and cast Wrath to get astral power. And if you can't cast because you have to move or you have to do something else, then your astral power just doesn't move. Like, it literally just does nothing. I think that's kind of how it worked in Shadowlands, right? In Shadowlands, before we had Sepulchre tier set, on AoE, we would literally have dots on like 10 targets, and we would sit there and generate nothing until we casted a Starfire, right? I didn't like that gameplay. I think that was a horrible gameplay. So I hope they're not going too overboard with these changes where they move the astral power generation to fillers too much. Because right now, our astral power generation seems really good. We generate a decent amount of astral power without having to cast any fillers, right? On AoE, that is. And I like that. I think that's cool. Of course, it causes some other issues with entering Eclipse being too important, blah, 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 right? But yeah, there is a concern that Wrath and Starfire is going to be too important when it comes to astral power generation again, which would be horrible. So, or horrible gameplay-wise. So I hope that's not going to happen. Then Moonfire and Sunfire generate 6 astral power up from 2. Ooh, that's a big buff. Huh. Moonfire and Sunfire generate 6 astral power up from 2. I like the application of dots feeling more valuable. I like that a lot, because that's exactly counteracting the issue that I just mentioned earlier, where if the majority of the astral power generation comes from casting fillers, then we have the same situation we had in Shadowlands, which feels awful. So Moonfire and Sunfire generating more astral power on application is going to counteract that a little bit. I guess the concern here is that it would be too much astral power, and it would be weird again. All right, because, I mean, Moonfire is 6. With Twin Moons, it would be 12. So casting 1 Moonfire would give you 12 astral power, which is more than a Wrath or a Starfire, right? So that is a little bit weird. Maybe it's fine. I mean, as long as the damage that the Wrath or the Starfire does outweighs the extra astral power that you gain from casting Moonfire. But yeah, 12 astral power seems like a lot for Moonfire. I guess what they could do, if Twin Moons is the only issue with the astral power generation here, then they could technically nerf Twin Moons to not give you the astral power from the second Moonfire. So they could say, hey, Twin Moon still triggers an additional Moonfire, but it doesn't give you the astral power from it. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, Stellar Flare generates 10 astral power up from 8. Okay. Nature's Balance generates 2 astral power every 3 seconds up from 1. Every 2, okay. Star Search and Starfall damage increased by 20%. Cool. I think it's good that fillers get buffed because our fillers are really bad. Like, both Starfall and Star Search do no damage. The only reason why we are doing a lot of AoE and single targets still is because we generate so much astral power and we got so many free Star Searches and free Starfalls that it counteracts the fact that they don't do that much damage. So 20% buff, I guess, is not that insane considering that they didn't really do much damage in the first place. So 20% to very little is still very little, but it's good. I like that they're buffing the spenders. Then Astral Smolder deals damage over 8 seconds, up from 4. So that's a pretty big buff, right? Double the amount. Actually, wait. It's the same amount of damage, just for longer, right? Oh no, the damage increased to 40-80% of spell damage, done up from 20-40. Okay, so that's interesting, actually. Because I guess the issue with this is now as well, I didn't even think about this earlier. So basically what they're saying here is that the Astral Smolder does its damage over 8 seconds instead of 4, which is actually a nerf. Because if you do the damage slower, that is obviously, like, bad. Because, you know, if the mobs die after 4 seconds, then you wasted half of the damage, right? No, I mean, I'm not considering this right now. I'm not considering the number buff. Obviously, the number buff is a buff, but I'm saying that the duration increase is a nerf. Of course, the number buff is still a buff, but yeah, the duration increase is a nerf. Like, it is just a nerf to the ability, to the talent, for it to be longer. It's like saying, hey, that's why Cosmic Rapidity is such a good ability, right? Cosmic Rapidity does your dots damage faster, which is better. Now, Smolder is igniting, I believe, so it's not technically the same as Cosmic Rapidity stuff, but it's still the same for when things are dying slower. That's The same issue we had with Starfall, not scaling with haste, because Starfall is always 8 seconds, and in the past, Starfall would actually scale with haste, so the duration of Starfall used to be lower the more haste you have. And the reason why they changed that was because of our mastery that we had in Legion. Our mastery, wait, how did it work again? So if we had Starfall up, our dots would do more damage. Yeah, that's how it worked, right? So if you had Starfall up, your dots would do more damage. So the fact that Starfall's duration was lower with more haste was actually a nerf to our mastery. So what they ended up doing is they made Starfall not scale with haste anymore to buff our mastery. But then they removed our mastery. So our Starfall doesn't buff anything at the moment. If you have Starfall up, it doesn't matter how long it is. Like, it doesn't matter if your Starfall is 8 seconds or 4 seconds or 2 seconds, it doesn't buff anything. It just does damage, right? So technically speaking, if our Starfall would be shorter, that would be better. We would be much stronger if our Starfall would do its damage faster. Because, you know, that would mean that Starfall fits into buff windows better. When mobs die fast, it would do the damage quicker, so you wouldn't lose half of your Starfall damage at the end of a pull, stuff like that. It would just basically buff our burst AoE. And this thing with Astral Smolder is actually the exact same thing, the same issue and the same fix that we had in Legion with our mastery. So because of Waning Twilight, they're basically increasing the Smolder duration to give us a higher uptime on Waning Twilight. But in return, they are nerfing Astral Smolder to do its damage over 8 seconds instead of 4, which is a nerf for burst damage, technically speaking. In return, they're buffing the damage of the spell, which is good, but it still is a nerf to our burst AoE. Listen, I'm not saying that this change to Astral Smolder is an overall nerf. I'm saying that the duration increases a nerf. Yeah? Like, I understand that they buffed the number. I'm just clarifying that the longer duration is a nerf. Then, Cosmic Rapidity increased the rate at which Moonfire, Sunfire, and Stellarfire deal damage by 20%. Down from 25. Okay, so they nerfed this a little bit. Not that much. Cosmic Rapidity. Where's Cosmic Rapidity again? I mean, you just pick it up all of the time, so... Sometimes talents that you always pick, I forgot where they are. It's here. Okay, right. It's mandatory for Orbit Breaker, which means you always take it anyway, right? There's just no way you don't take it, so... I guess it is what it is. Touch the Cosmos. Set armor now reduces the astral power cost of your first... Okay, I mean, yeah, they're nerfing the Force, that makes sense. Soul to Force now increases Starfire damage and AP generation during Eclipse by 30%. For each target hit beyond the first. Okay, up to 90. Oh. They capped it at 90 already? So that's capped at 4 targets, yeah? So it's a 4 target cap when it comes to Astral Power generation. So a little bit of a low target cap, but I guess it's fine. So that means we get like 19 Astral Power if we hit 4 targets with Starfire. Wait, but the damage is also target capped? Or only the Astral Power generation? Wait, so I'm not sure I understand this. So the damage and AP generation is 30% increase? That's just a nerf to Starfire's damage, right? Quite a big nerf. I mean, this is literally like a 90%... If it's a 90% Starfire damage increase... Okay, wait, so it's the Starfire damage that is increased, not the splash damage increase, and we had the 150% bonus to Starfire's AoE splash, right? How much percent of Starfire the splash? 65% splash. So basically, instead of having a 150% splash damage increase, we have a 90% Starfire increase. I actually have no idea if this adds up to a nerf or a buff. I have no idea. Did somebody do the math? Somebody smarter than me. All right, let's see. Still the Force now increase. I think I'll read it afterwards. Anyway, let's move on. In the meantime, Power of Golden damage increased by 75%. Okay. Dance of the Dreamfire Dragon's damage increased by 20%. Okay, that's a pretty big buff considering that they buffed the proc rate of it too, right? It's 2 RPPM instead of 1, plus 20% damage increase. So I'm not the biggest fan whenever they buff passive damage. But as long as it's not a super big portion of our damage, I guess it's fine. But I don't like it that much. When you look at your damage meter and half your damage spells are just like passive things that just happen. Because then this is a dream, they just happen. There's nothing you do. It either happens or it doesn't happen, you know? And Power of Golden is the same. So I don't necessarily like it if that's the thing, but I mean, Power of Goldrin is not necessarily the exact same because Power of Goldrin can only proc when it casts Star Surge. So I guess Power of Goldrin is not necessarily the same. Like it's not RNG. I mean, it is RNG, but the more Star Surges you cast, the more chance of Power of Goldrin you have. So it's okay. Like Power of Goldrin, in my opinion, is fine. But Denizens of the Dream, on the other hand, they're not that. Denizens of the Dream are just RPPM, so they're completely passive, right? So that's why I'm not the biggest fan of this. Power of Goldrin is not an RNG thing. Like it literally is directly correlated to your Star Surge cast, right? Then, Friend of the Fae now increased Arcane and Nature damage by 8% for 26 and was 44% for 30. Okay. Oh, I'm not so happy about this Denizen buff. Not necessarily because I don't like Denizens that much. I mean, I do not like them that much. But, I mean, the reason why I don't like this so much is the fact when you look at our talent tree, I don't think there's gonna be a situation where we can pick those up for M+. Like, I just basically hate it if your single target talents are super strong, but you can't pick them up for AoE. Because some classes are like that right now, right? And Moonkin is not. Right now, Moonkin, if you play M+, you do a decent amount of single target damage. Even though Moonkin single target damage is bad in the raid. And the only reason that is because most of our single target talents, you just pick them up in your AoE spec as well. And there aren't that many important single target damage talents that you lose out on, which is good. Like, it's really good for M+, right? Because in other classes, when they go their full AoE spec, they do like 0 single target damage in return, which sucks in my opinion, right? There's just no like hybridy things. So whenever they buff talents like Denizens and Friend of Fae, which are pure, in my opinion, they're like very heavily like single target focused, right? Because Denizens don't do AoE damage. Then that kind of creates a situation where Blizzard will balance our damage around single target talents. And if you don't pick the single target talents up, then you're gonna suck quite a lot in M+ single target, which for me personally sucks a little bit. So I'm not the biggest fan of them buffing these two talents because it's gonna be unlikely that you can pick them up in M+, right? Because in M+, there's so many talents you have to pick, right? Just like, I mean, going through an M+ build, maybe you don't pick up Stellar Flight anymore in M+, but I'll pick it up anyway for now. So this is M+, right? So you pick Waning, Nature's Grace. I guess you're gonna pick up Solo the first. I mean, you obviously pick up this. Maybe if we skip Power of Goldrin and Starweaver, but that's also like a big damage nerf, especially because they just buffed Power of Goldrin, right? So they also buffed Power of Goldrin, which in return, again, forces us to even pick this up, right? I mean, maybe we just don't pick up Umbral anymore. Because now that we don't have 2-piece bonus anymore from the current set, maybe Umbral is not gonna be less strong? I wonder. Because if we can do that, then that would be nice. But I guess there's just so many talents you have to pick up before you can move on. Like, I still need 2 points. What else would I pick up? I would have to pick up Umbral Intensity instead. Or Smolder. It's like... oh, whatever. Let's pick this. So yeah, now we're down here. We need Orbit Breaker. We need Star-Lord. We need Incarn. We kind of need Starweaver or Rattle, considering that we picked Power of Goldrin, right? I mean, not picking something here would be weird. So now we have 5 points left. We kind of need mushrooms in M+. I mean, not having mushrooms is a bit... I mean, you can play without, but I don't know. It's a bit weird for sure. Then we need Fury. Standard, I guess, 1 point here. So how do you get 2 points for this? You would have to skip... I don't know. What do you skip? Have to skip this or something? Ugh. I mean, that seems bad. Mushrooms just take so many spots. I hate I don't like this. Yeah, maybe you just play without mushrooms, honestly. Fuck it. Maybe you just play without. Just play this instead. They also buffed Elun's Guidance, right? And Radiant Moonlight. I didn't get to that yet. Elun's Guidance now reduced the cost of Star Search by 8 and Starfall by 10. Radiant Moonlight also increases 3 of Elun's damage by 50%. 50% damage increase. That's kind of a lot. Radiant Moonlight increases damage dealt by New Moon, Half Moon, and Full Moon by 25%. I mean, the New Moon thing is probably whatever. I mean, maybe it's better in single target now, but... I don't think... I mean, I was thinking about Rattle. I think Rattle is gonna get quite a big nerf without our current 4-piece. I think our 4-piece is pretty important for Rattle. So without that free Starfall or free Star Search, I'm not sure if Rattle is really gonna be a thing anymore. Because, I mean, right now, people don't even play it in M+ anymore, at least on high keys. And right now, we have a free Starfall entering Eclipse It's also, I mean, not having 4-piece is also gonna nerf Pulsar passively a bit, of course, too. And not having shooting stars with flare is also gonna nerf Pulsar a bit. I don't know. Interesting. Oh, Jandara did a post. Let's read Jandara's post. Shooting stars can no longer be triggered by stellar flare. Good change with the given reasoning, which reduces single target astral power generated by about 6%. And 10% in something like council or generally low area. New talent, wild surges, your chance to create a hard to estimate what kind of DPS boost this is, but it definitely does not come close to competing with Flare on lower targets pools and all current raid fights. Yeah, the only time where you'd want to pick this talent up, I mean, I was talking about this before. I think the only time you would really want to pick this up is on like actual like big AoE, like in Plus. And then in Plus, I'm not sure how good this is gonna be, really, because the amount of times we actually press Starfire is pretty low. I mean, I guess if you combo it with Smolder, I don't know. Rather than Starfire generates 10 astral power up to 8. This is pretty insane on single target and AoE if you include Salty Forest changes to Starfire. 12% more astral power generation in single target on its own. I really hope this is not going to be too strong. I don't want to be so reliant on fillers again. It's annoying. Moonfire and Sunfire generates 6 astral power up from 2. Starfire generates 10. Moonfire has some mean potential with Twin Moons for Stellar Innovation generating 24 astral power? Oh, Stellar Innovation. I forgot about the talent. Something generates 100% additional astral. Oh. Wait, so it's even more than I said. So it's 12? Oh, it's 24. Yeah, it's 24 astral power. If they would just nerf the Twin Moon Moonfire, it would be fine. Right? All they have to do is nerf the Twin Moon Moonfire, not generating astral power, maybe? I mean, I don't understand why this talent exists in the first place. The existence of this talent can only be bad, because you would only ever pick this up if it's actually better to cast Moonfires. And we never want that to happen, right? Like, we never want a timeline where you would rather cast Moonfire than any other spell to generate astral power. So I don't understand why this talent even exists in the first place. When would you ever pick this up? If it's not broken and our playstyle isn't ruined. It's there to do dot while moving. Sometimes I feel like there's a little bit of a misconception when it comes to Blizzard's way of thinking about the player base. Because I do see a situation where a player might actually gain damage from this talent, even though it's not the best. Imagine a situation, right, where there's a player that is not like super good at the game, and they lose a lot of damage from moving around, and they don't maximize their movement, blah, 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 right? So let's assume this player exists. We're gonna call them Sebla, okay? So Sebla plays Moonkin, doesn't know how to like properly optimize the global usage and GCs and movement, and ends up wasting a lot of damage moving around, right? So if this Sebla person would pick up Stellar Innovation, they might actually gain damage because they're playing suboptimally, and they would gain damage picking up this talent, right? Let's assume this is the case. Theoretically, having this option seems cool, right? But in reality, this Sebla person is not going to pick up this talent for multiple reasons. Number one, Sebla does not want to admit to himself that he's not playing the correct spec properly and doesn't want to pick up a talent that is a quote-unquote noob talent, right? Sebla's pride would not allow him to pick up this talent in the first place. And number two, Sebla probably isn't even aware of the fact that he would gain damage from picking this up because of suboptimal gameplay, right? So I think sometimes in Blizzard's world, they think, oh, if a person plays like this, they can pick up this talent and it's gonna solve their issue and they just have a different play style. But in reality, this is never the case. In reality, people do not... First of all, in reality, people do not know what talents are even good for in what situations. It rarely ever happens that there's a player, a casual player, that sits there and thinks, oh, you know what? So the best Moonkins in the world tell me to play this build, but actually I think that I am not playing that well and I'm moving a lot, so I'm gonna pick up this other talent. Like, how would they know? Like, people don't theory craft themselves. People look at what the theory crafters tell them to do and they just do that. They don't logically think in their heads like, oh, actually, this is pretty movement heavy, and I'm gonna pick up this other talent, even though it's a damage loss on Simcraft, but it's gonna be better for me personally. Like, people don't think this way. That's way too complex, right? People don't do that. And I think talents like this, Stellar Innovation, it almost seems like they're aimed at this player base, this imaginary player base that they think exists, that doesn't exist. At least I cannot see a player ever thinking this way, right? I don't think there's a single player in World of Warcraft that feels like, oh, I'm just gonna pick up this talent because I am moving too much and therefore I'm gonna gain damage picking. I don't know, like, I don't think this is ever like a thing. So I think the purpose of this talent is just bad. Like, no matter what their intentions were, I don't think it's ever gonna fulfill that kind of purpose. But so well, I mean, it is what it is, whatever. As long as it's never better playstyle wise, then I'm fine. I mean, to me, they could just remove this talent. Just like delete it. Because yeah, I don't know. If this is ever a talent that you want to pick up because it's better, then it's just bad. Like, that's just bad playstyle design at that point. But yeah, moving on. Nature's Balance generates 2 astral power every 3 seconds. The main problem that it has is that it competes with TM. What's TM again? Oh, Twin Moons. Yeah, obviously. TM, Flare, and Kindling, all of which are must-take outside single target, and in single target it's already taken. Like, I don't necessarily hate this Nature's Balance buff, just because there are situations in a raid where I'm deciding between Kindling and Nature's Balance. So if Nature's Balance is a little bit better, then maybe I would lean more towards Nature's Balance sometimes. Because yeah, quite a few times I just pick up Kindling because I'm just like, whatever. And there's some ads here and there, so I like the dot extension. Sensor and Starfall damage increase. Yeah. Astral Smolder. Okay. Even with the 8 seconds duration, it will still have very low uptime when you want it, since you start casting Starfire after you send all of your other damage. Yeah. That's what I was saying as well. Like, that's the big problem with Smolder. This is meant to be waning alternative in AoE. Then it automatically becomes a 1-pointer, which makes it pretty fine to take. Yeah, I guess Jundara has a point that I didn't necessarily think about, that if you only take it to keep up waiting, you're just gonna put 1 point in it, right? Which is whatever, because it's in this middle area. This whole middle row here has so many, like, bad talents that you can just, you know, if you have to put 1 point in Smolder, it's whatever. It's not gonna be the end of the world, right? While down here, we have so many mandatory talents that we don't have enough points. While here we have way too many points and we don't know what to do with them. Cosmic Rapidity, just a flat nerf since it's still easily must take, but maybe it's just meant to make it slightly less insane. 2% less astral power generation, okay. Touch of the Cosmos, it was bound to happen and fine, just find the reasoning a bit weird because we are gonna replace the set anyways. What was weird with the reasoning? Change will make balance set bonus power more comparable to other classes. Those are the main change we're making to reduce the importance of entering clips as often as possible. Oh, that is, I guess, the weird explanation. Yeah, because saying that you change the 4-piece to not have us enter lunar eclipse makes no sense when we're gonna replace that anyway. So they need to make sure that we don't enter lunar eclipse without this set, not with the set, right? So that is a bit weird, yeah. What's the first increased Starfire damage? Love this change. Casting Starfire in AoE always felt bad because it generates a little astral power. Yeah, I like the astral power thing. I don't know about the damage, I guess. We'll see what that does. But yeah, the astral power thing is pretty cool that we generate more when we actually hit multiple targets with it. As long as it doesn't become too important. So that is something that I personally have a really big issue with. I don't want to sit there being super reliant on casting Starfires to get my astral power. Welcome 4% single target buff. Still wish this didn't block Weaver, Rattle, do it to the no, there's been aren't only strong. Yeah, I agree. Still the same issue. Minor 1.4% single target buff together with the 100% buff it received. Those 2 talents will definitely be a must pick whenever you want to do any relevant single target damage. Yeah, see, this is what I'm worried about when it comes to plus single target damage. If we don't want to fully suck on single target and Unpleasant after these changes, then we have to pick up these 2 plus Power of Goldrin, right? Which is just so many points. We have to pick up this and this and this. Plus Incarn, plus this. I don't know, it's just so much. At that point, we can't play shrooms anymore, and that would also be weird. The 40% uptime at 0 haste and 61 at 40. Average haste, which is 50% damage, so it becomes a very competitive option. Yeah. Luna's Guidance. We'll have to wait for Sims, but probably fine, but not best. Radiant Moonlight also increases Fear of Balloons damage. Could actually be good in Plastis. It's usually 45% of the damage and 6% of our Astrofire generation. Yeah. Will most likely also increase Orbit Breaker damage. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about the Orbit Breaker. Anyhow, it seems interesting. Like, these changes seems good. I'm just really worried about plus single target damage. That's the only thing that worries me. Everything else seems pretty fine.